What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the show. This is going to be another crossover episode between Travis Makes Friends and Figuring It Out. So thank you for listening wherever you're listening. And we wanted to do kind of like a second part to the cancer episode, just to talk a little bit more about, to expound a little bit more on some of the lessons that we've learned along the way, and reflect on some of the, I guess, emotions and feelings of everything kind of while we're still in the middle of it before we're kind of on the other side of this. So
I don't know what that was.
already funny.
You know me.
So Eric, why don't you...
Jackie just looked at me and went, when he said the emotions that we're feeling, and I was like, and your eyes look watery, and I was like, oh, we're in it.
See, this is what happens every time I try to be serious. You guys knock me for never being serious or getting in touch with my emotions, and then I try to do it once, and you guys just laugh.
Oh my gosh.
And then wonder why.
I was trying to read Jackie, because your eyes looked watery, and then you did your eyes wide.
No, I just feel like it's always awkward for me and Eric, because like you probably talk the most on the podcast, and so it's always just like me. Well, I'm just saying, of the three, like, it's not a bad thing. It's a good thing. You have lots of wisdom to give, but I just always feel like it's awkward because it's just me and Eric. Because like you're talking, and so it's like I can't like stare at you, but then I still see Eric over here. So then when you just make weird, awkward eye contact, it's like, oh hey,
okay.
So it's like I'm not looking.
That makes a
forward.
little more sense. Yeah,
we're good at picking up
I have
signals.
to do this.
Yeah,
I know.
I just stare at Jackie.
How we said, I guess, because
you hear what Travis is saying.
What are we gonna say, like at a round table?
I don't know. I'm just saying it's weird.
Just an overhead camera. It's just the tops of our heads.
I don't want that.
That's all I'm saying.
You
Okay.
see my balding head.
Yeah. I was gonna make the joke, but again, I'm being too nice to you.
Oh yeah.
That's the worst thing, honestly, about cancer is that
that you can't mock me as much.
No, I do. I feel
that's
like
the worst part of cancer.
No,
that's
honestly,
the most difficult thing for you.
It's been really hard for me. No, it is. I do feel like today, I feel like I'm kind of bursting at the seams of like I've been storing up vitriol for you, but I've been waiting because like I feel bad.
Sure.
But like once you're at full health,
yeah,
bam,
right,
it's gonna be bad for you.
Are you writing these jokes down, or
that'd be so messed up? Like the day
I
just
folder of cancer jokes.
You're ringing the bell, and I'm like, it's time.
All right. Well,
So
I'm
anyway.
gonna take this Magic Mind. Did you already took it?
I did.
Jackie, how many times?
I'm
supposed
drinking
to wait
this.
to do it till we're on
Cheers.
camera. Oh, you can't cheers an empty thing. That's bad luck.
I'm going to drink the rest of it. There's a little tiny bit left.
Think.
All right.
There we go.
Mine's green.
Bad luck if you don't. So, cheers, Magic Mind. Thank you. Travis C20 is the code.
So in the last episode, we were sitting there and we were jiving with everything you said. We have to.
It'd be weird if you disagreed.
I disagree. No, but
Actually, your take is wrong.
Right, but you talked a lot about cancer diagnosis, and then we talked about how it affected us, which is like what people most are wondering is like, how did Eric and Jackie fare with this?
Right.
And but then you started talking
about how terrible the healthcare system is.
Yeah, I agree.
We covered that.
Anyway, so we talked about a lot of stuff like that we can agree upon. But then you started talking about like coping with like mortality. And that's the part where I'm like, yeah, that scares me all the time. And Jackie's like, that scares me all the time. And then you're like, but then I just went into the abyss and read the Meditations by Marcus Aurelius and then just felt better.
Yeah.
And we were like,
well, to be fair,
that doesn't
I didn't
make sense.
Read the Meditations.
You read sections.
I reflected on my time reading it
That's
and
such a-
studying stuff because there was like
That's exactly what someone that reads that would say. They'd be like, I didn't read it. I reflected on it.
Yeah. There's like
That's such a Travis bullshit thing to say.
well, there's
I was
also a few other
reflecting on the
books on
Meditations.
Stoicism that I've read. It's just like Meditations is like ground zero of Stoicism.
Yeah.
So if you're gonna like start somewhere, it may as well start there.
Yeah.
But
see,
there's
this
a
is
bunch
the
of
thing.
other
So you're
writings.
talking about all this, like, of course, this is what you do, but like, I don't think that.
Okay.
So I wanted you to reflect openly on some of the points, and I want to see if me and Jackie can understand better the insanity that you talked about in the last episode.
Okay, so I'll break it down the best way I know how, and then we'll see how that goes, and hopefully it makes sense. But, and I don't want to understate how, because I said this to somebody else recently, and they're like, wow, that's like really mature of you or something like that. And I was like, I might be recounting this story in too positive a light for me because like I was also scared shitless. Like it wasn't like I was just like this stoic person meditating on a mountain and like came out all fine and happy and whatever. Like I was very anxious and very stressed for the entire in between time and still lingering now to this day.
Well,
but
let me just pause right there though, because that's one of the misconceptions I think people have about Stoicism in general, right? It's like when I first heard about Stoicism, I thought that's not healthy because it was like suppress all your emotions.
Yeah,
but Stoicism doesn't teach that.
Yeah, if you are not familiar with Stoic philosophy, then in culture it's mainly used just to attribute to somebody who doesn't experience emotion, and so they would be like, oh, that person's stoic. But Stoic philosophy is much deeper than that, and runs off of a lot of different kind of moral tenets and values, and one of those values is kind of meditating on your own death. And when I started studying Stoicism, it was kind of coming out of, the IFB and hardcore fundamentalist Christian doctrine. And so I just kind of started looking to other places to see like, hey, what around the world is also familiar? Like what does this belief system that I grew up in have in common with these other belief systems that other people have been doing for a really long time? And so Stoicism was one of the ones that I studied a decent amount, like Buddhism and some other things like that I've kind of grabbed different pieces of as I like was leaving the world that I grew up in, or that we all grew up in. But Stoicism was just one of the ones that stuck with me more, mainly because I like the kind of figurehead, and Marcus Aurelius is kind of attributed, like a lot of Stoicism is attributed to Marcus Aurelius, even though he would have studied under, I think who would have been like the main guy back then was a guy named Epictetus, who was the one who was originally writing around like this style of philosophy. Because this is like in the time in the Roman Empire where there's competing philosophies, like striving for prominence, and you have different philosophical schools with Socrates and Plato, and then Epictetus and Marcus Aurelius, and then this is when Christianity is kind of on the rise, or at least in the conversation after Jesus' death, and the early church is starting, and they're spreading these things, and so there's a lot of different competing, philosophies at the time.
It's crazy that they're still relevant today. Like,
Marcus
Aurelius is like, now there's still people doing podcasts about him and all this.
Right.
And
well, Ryan Holiday's entire career is based off of writing modern day Stoic philosophy.
Plato still has product in every store in the country, like modeling clay, and kids play with it every day.
Totally, yeah. Plato, the one and only Plato.
So stupid. No, it is funny. I was just gonna say as a side note, it's funny because like, when that meme was going around, it was like, how often do you think about the Roman Empire?
Yeah.
And I was like, I'm normal and I don't. And I was like, who the hell thinks about the Roman Empire? And then I instantly was like, Travis. I was like, who sits there? Like, people would be like asking their husband, like,
Travis for sure.
And then I was like, oh.
But to be fair,
it's so funny when I get like tastes of your algorithm in my algorithm.
Oh yeah.
And I'm like, why the hell do I see this?
Yeah.
Oh, I'm friends with
I was going to actually say, I was about to say, well, I never really read a book about the Roman Empire, but
I just follow all the leaders.
I was going to say,
pledge allegiance.
Literally, one of the books I read was How to Think Like a Roman Emperor.
Yeah.
But
I remember when
it's more like a kind of, not a biography of Marcus Aurelius, but it's like it's a book on Stoicism using biographical examples from Marcus Aurelius's life. And so I was more kind of attracted to that figurehead as a whole, because I personally engage more in philosophy that also includes practicality, rather than just like somebody sitting there on a mountain with their legs crossed thinking for their entire life. And it's like, okay, well, thinking, there's a lot of good behind that, but if it never involves doing, then there's a level of practicality that's missing from the philosophical argument as a whole, that I don't think that you can get by just sitting there and thinking about it, because that, like, practicality and philosophy sometimes butt heads.
Do you think some of that comes from, because we joked, I don't know if you remember this, I do, because I think about it all the time, but I remember one time we were talking about Jordan Peterson, and I said, I think you only like Jordan Peterson because he's so similar to how we grew up and like what he says. And then you were like, I think the only reason you don't like Jordan Peterson is because he's similar to how we grew up. And I think about that all the time, because it is an interesting perspective.
Yeah.
Because like, I was actually talking to my therapist the other day, BetterHelp.com.
Like Donald Trump.
BetterHelp.com/PreachBoys.
You just say that.
My therapist.
No, I was talking to my therapist, and I said, it's funny that you like run from things and you run toward things. So like you run from things you didn't like as a kid
Mhm.
and you run toward things that you did like.
To feel comforting.
But either way, you end up way closer to the things you didn't like than you wanted to. Like with parents,
Yeah.
it's like we all end up like our parents.
Mhm.
Like now I'm getting older. I'm like, oh God, I just did something that reminds me of my
Totally.
dad.
You
when he
catch
was-
yourself saying something to your
Yeah.
kid, you're like, I swore I would never say that.
Yeah.
I don't know what else. to
Now
do.
I'm the uncool dad.
Yeah.
But anyway, all that to say, I was curious, like, do you think your desire for a philosophy that also has a direct action associated with it comes from growing up religious where we did have a very like mission driven, like go do something, learn something, go propagate it? Like, or do you think it's just like a personality type? Because I feel the same way, like the navel gazing stuff doesn't really
Yeah.
float my boat. Like I'm like, how does this work?
I always want
now.
to see both is my
Yeah.
thing is like,
And I love the phrase navel gazing. That's my
Thank you
favorite.
for bringing that up.
It's my favorite. I read that in like, I think
So I have
Chris-
no idea what that means.
it's like pondering yourself, like navel gate, like philosopher, like you're looking at your
Belly button.
just looking down, introspective. I read that in like a Christopher Hitchens book or something, very woke Christopher Hitchens book, and
Yeah.
he was like, he said it, or Dawkins or somebody, and I was like, I love that phrase. I think about it all the
That's
time.
great. Thank you for saying.
It's probably a Roman.
Thank you for
something.
blessing
That's
us.
probably like a
Probably.
Roman Empire
Yeah.
thing. Navel gaze at your navel.
See, we all think about the Roman Empire,
Navel-
even
navel-
when you think you're not.
Yeah, navel gazing is self-indulgent or excessive contemplation of oneself or a single issue at the expense of a wider view.
Hmm.
Which I feel like
Solid use.
I feel like that's a lot of new age stuff. That's why it
Yeah.
doesn't resonate with me. It's like
That's what I'm saying.
cleanse your aura, you
Right.
know, and it's like think about you, and it's like what about society?
Yeah. Like your studies are never going to give you a holistic picture,
Yeah,
is
right.
my point. Like that's why even entrepreneurship, I think, to answer your question, I think entrepreneurship more informed that decision
Okay.
than the way that we grew up.
But
Because
the way
I
you
was-
grew up probably influenced your
I'm sure it
entrepreneurship.
did. Absolutely. Well, like absolutely. There's definitely things that influence that from growing up, I'm sure, that I'm not even consciously aware of. But I think entrepreneurship was more obvious to me because I would read all these books and some of them were from, you know, somebody who was out there doing it, just an entrepreneur that figured it out, went out, built a business from scratch, made a lot of money. Like they figured it out, but they had no formal education. You know, they wrote more books than they have read. You know what I mean? Like they wrote one book, read none. You know what I mean? And then you juxtapose that to somebody who purely is just like a business, for lack of a better word, a business philosopher. Like they teach business in school and they are the best at it. They teach at the best schools. They review the best research. They write their own, dissertations, and they write their own. They publish their own research, and they do not lack any knowledge. They know all the stats. They run all of their decision making through, almost like algorithmic databases that help inform them whether or not they should attack this business in this market for this reason or whatever. But a lot of them still haven't actually started a business and like seen it through and had to make the decisions that they're consulting other people to make. And that to me is like, my point is I find value in both of those things, like from the person who just went out and did it, but they may be telling you something that's completely against what the stats say.
Mm-hmm.
So these two people are going to kind of butt heads sometimes, because this one is the Harvard MBA who teaches at Wharton, and this one is like a guy who learned a trade at 17 and he was a plumber for 12 years and then earned his way into buying part of the company and then sold it for 12 million when he was 38 or 40 or whatever. And it's like, well, I mean, this person's doing pretty well though. Like you can't discount what this person's saying because they actually did it. They're not sitting here being like, they're not arguing with you based on some philosophical concept
or theory,
or a study that was done in the 1990s or whatever. They're like, no, like I did this thing and here's exactly what I did, how I did it, and here's how you can follow what I did. Whereas this person's going to look at what that person's saying and be like, oh, well, actually that's bad advice because of these 4 different studies and this peer-reviewed data would suggest otherwise. And it's like, well, you can't just completely discount what this person's saying, but this person can't completely discount what this person's saying. So like to me, I like, my point is like, I like getting my advice mainly from somebody who participates in both fields, somebody who thinks a lot, because it's a completely different personality profile. Like it's rare to find somebody who's a thinker and a doer, like in one. At least in my experience, like you have people who are just doers. They just take action and they move through obstacle,
and they usually aren't crazy thinkers.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Yeah, they don't spend a lot of time like worrying about the ethics of the situation or thinking about the future, the
20 years
values.
From now or whatever,
like they don't think a lot about that stuff. Whereas this person over here is almost exclusively doing that, and their only activity is writing about the things that they're thinking about. You know what I mean? Like they're not actually applying these things in the setting that they are giving advice to apply those things in. And so when it comes to like philosophy and stuff, that's kind of how I feel about it. Is like with Buddhism and, practicing monks and people like that. It's like they dedicate their entire life to nothing but thinking and reading and being present and these things, all of which have very high level of practical application in everybody's lives. But I think that you're missing a good portion of life if you're only spending your time thinking about what life is rather than like doing life and experiencing life. So that's why I think I was more drawn to that like Stoic philosophy when I started reading more philosophy books. Like right out of all that stuff, I didn't even want to think about philosophy. I didn't want to think about religion. I just wanted to go make some money and like figure out what I was going to do with my life because I had no idea what I was even doing with my life at that time. Right. So I was just reading business books, sales books, persuasion books. And then kind of my reading now is a lot more like into philosophy, how to live a good life, how to be happy, like all the things that I think are really like more important overall. And so I kind of came from that entrepreneurship lens, and I think that's what kind of informed that. But I do enjoy that, but that's why I think Marcus Aurelius like had a lot of my respect because he was a Roman emperor who was like self-identified as a philosopher, and this is like competing against like hedonism, which was a really popular belief system at that time, and people in his own court and his own family who were engaging in like this hedonistic lifestyle, which is, for those listening, purely about seeking pleasure. And Stoicism is very much the opposite of that, where it's more about discipline and then creating your life around certain values that you don't budge from and things like that. But yeah, so Stoic philosophy is kind of where I ended up spending a good amount of my time when I was kind of studying some of these things. And one of their tenets is meditating on your own death. And that activity is a really valuable thing to continue doing. To inform your day-to-day decisions, especially anything that's like a long-term, big decision that you have to make. And so it's always been a helpful filter for me to look at big decisions, especially through the lens of you're going to die one day. And this is one of like Gary Vee's things that he talks about a good amount too, that he went viral for a couple times, where somebody's like 3 words, best advice. And he was like, you're going to die. And it was like, at the time, everybody's like, oh, that's great. Like great advice, Gary. And it's like, well, this is like 3,000-year-old advice, like starting from these philosophers, in ancient, Rome. But I think it was Rome. Yeah, Rome. And so people like that have also been applying it modern day. Ryan Holiday writes about it all the time now, but it's been something that's really helpful for me. However, when I got the cancer diagnosis, it was the first time where it felt like I just can't explain it. It was just like this visceral feeling of reality that like,
well, it wasn't theory
know
anymore.
I'm going. Yeah,
it's
like
it's now.
I know conceptually that I could get into a car accident at any point and die. I also know that I could get on a plane and the plane could crash. There's an unlimited number of like dangerous situations that present themselves on a day-to-day basis. Just like the odds of it happening are so low, you can't let it affect how you live your life or think about it all the time. But when you get a cancer diagnosis, it's like you have to think about it. You're forced to deal with the situation. And then this was the first time that I really had to experience that outside of the belief system of like, there's a real heaven, there's a real hell. And there's for sure an afterlife where I'll spend eternity, which I'm sure gives comfort to a lot of people who have cancer who believe all that stuff. But just it was one of those situations where I was like, okay, this is going to be new waters to navigate, because now I have to deal with my mortality. And if what happens after I die is what I think happens after I die, then like not much is going to happen and I'm not going to remember much and nothing, you know what I mean? So it was just kind of like one of those, I have to allow myself to imagine what that's going to be like and what that means for me in order to be able to let it go and process that emotion effectively. And so that was why I say, like, when I thought about it, I don't know why this illustration keeps popping up in my mind, and I talked about it in the last episode, so forgive me for being repetitive, but I just thought about it. So it became so real when I thought about walking through the cemetery and seeing the different, death dates of the people that were in the cemetery, and just realizing that like, hopefully, like, knock on wood, I'll be here till I'm 100 years old. Like, that's what I'm optimizing for. I live my life in a way, like my exercise, my diet, everything. I try to optimize my life to where my health is a priority and that I'll be around here for a really long time. So I'd like to think I'll live to be 100 or maybe even 120. Like a lot of these, people are saying our generation is going to have a lot of people who are living to 120, maybe even 130, 140. So it's like, I would like to think that I'd be one of those people. But even if I defied all of the odds and I lived to be 150, it's like, cool, 120 years from now, I'll still be, alive. But a year after I'm gone, I'll be just as gone as I would have been if I died tomorrow.
Okay,
like,
pause. This is what you talked about last time. And
yeah.
This is where we both looked at each other and went, okay, where's the comfort in that?
Because it's irrelevant. Like the additional time doesn't make my experience of leaving better or worse. I'll be gone. It doesn't matter. Like, that is irrelevant. What, even if there's an afterlife, even if I end up, knocking on pearly gates or whatever, or the opposite.
Yeah.
Like,
I don't see the first option happening.
Well, I have eternal security, so
that's true. I did. I dropped that on that comment.
I believed it at the time, so it counts.
Yesterday,
my name's written in the book.
There was a post that went super crazy.
Yeah.
And a guy commented something about going to hell or something. And I said, once saved, always saved, bucko.
Yeah, exactly. I don't know what
already
Bible
locked
you're
it
reading
down,
from.
baby. That's like that's got to be so annoying for the people at heaven, like checking the gate. And they're like, dang it, technicality. He scraped in.
That's what I told her. I was like, if heaven exists, I think that so many more people are going to be there than we think are going to be there.
Yeah.
Like, we're just going to show up and be like, really, that guy?
Yeah.
Like, really, this person's here.
Yeah.
But either way, my point is saying that, like, whether there is an afterlife or there's not an afterlife, like, if I showed up in heaven, I showed up in hell, there's nothing there, whatever happens, like, my interpretation of my own life on earth will not be any different if I'm gone tomorrow versus if I'm gone when I'm 150.
So I guess that's my question then is, and I understand part of that. I'm asking this because I feel like this is the question people are asking, but also there's part of me that goes back and forth in my own mind. There's like, I understand the idea of like, okay, nothing really matters. We decide what does. And I think about that all the time. And like, I've tried to do that. The other piece of me though goes, if there's not an eternal factor, at some level I go like what does legacy mean? Why do we because I think mentally I used to always be like, what's my legacy going to be? What's my this? And then realistically, like, unless you're an emperor, like unless you're like George
level
Washington, they're not going to talk about you in 300 years, So like, I guess my question is like,
but even if in 10,000 years, they won't be talking about George Washington probably.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Like, you go far enough into the future.
But that's what I mean though, is like, where do you draw? Because I think someone could listen to that and then go like, well, what's my motivation to not be a hedonist and just like burn bright and then burn out and then, you know what I mean? Like,
because, well, for hedonism in particular, I think it's just because pleasure seeking is never going to lead to happiness here. Like my like optimizing, that's why I think optimizing for happiness is the ultimate solution rather than optimizing for any of these other things. Like hedonism is not optimizing for happiness. It's optimizing for pleasure.
Yeah.
And anytime you seek pleasure as your number one value, you're going to end up empty. know of any examples of
Yeah.
anybody who just like made pleasure their ultimate
Yeah.
goal in
Well,
life.
you're chasing
who
a
ended up being
dragon that
happy.
like forever.
You're,
It's
and
like,
you're mistaking pleasure for happiness, and they're not the same
Big
thing.
difference, yeah.
You know what I mean? So I don't think that you can be happy, joyful, peaceful when you're purely seeking pleasure all the time.
Right.
So
when it
you-
always
you want to
compounds where
optimize
it's
for
like,
that.
I need bigger and better to make
Yeah,
me
well, you
feel
get
better,
desensitized to this form of pleasure, so you have to
Yeah.
go find a different form, or
Yeah.
or go further down that path, or
Yeah.
whatever it is, which will inevitably end in your demise. whether that means you actually die, or that means
Or
that
you end up
you end up in a drug house, or you end
Yeah.
up homeless, or you end up in prison, or whatever it is.
Well,
Like,
we live
it
in
doesn't lead
Vegas.
down a good
I mean, you
path.
literally see those people
Right.
that
Yeah.
probably showed up here with a couple grand, and then
yeah, good
now
intentions.
they're asking for
Right.
$5.
Exactly. So that like it didn't even cross my mind like during that time to just be like, oh fuck it, nothing matters. You know what I mean?
But some people do. That's why I wanted to ask, because like some people would get the diagnosis and be like, I fucking wasted my time working.
yeah.
I should have just been.
Live like you were dying.
Yeah.
It was honestly a little bit of the opposite for me. And I think that might
You're like, I've been wasting time.
No, not been wasting time. Just like I felt like I haven't achieved everything I wanted to achieve. And I was like, that would be a bummer to leave this earth without having like set my family up the way I want to. Like, taking care of my kids the way I wanted to. Like those things really like sat deeply with me, because I want to be able to leave those things for them, especially if it ended up being like a terminal thing, which, it's not, thank God, but like, knock on wood, hopefully, we're still waiting for final results, but we're pretty optimistic that it's fine now. If it ended up being that way, like that was the worst thought that I had the whole time, was just like, I'm not gonna be able to see my kids grow up, and they're not really ever going to know who I was, because they're still kids. They're 3 and 5. Like, they don't really know me.
Yeah.
They would only be able to know me through stories, maybe listening to podcasts or whatever
Through
else
legend.
that I did. Yeah. But
We
that
would
be the
make up
only way.
really cool stuff though, just so
Thank
you
you.
know.
Just
I
so you
would
know.
expect that.
Well, you said that. I remember you making that one comment too, though, like about like even like our cars, because like we have no car payment, so we keep putting off getting a nicer car. And you made a comment about that. You're like, yeah. I guess I should have just bought a nicer car a while ago.
Yeah, it did kind of reframe
So-
because one of the core values is delayed gratification, and it did kind of reframe that a little bit, because
Yeah.
I was just like, at what point am I going to allow myself some luxuries that I keep putting off,
It's like the
because I
people
know
that-
logically they don't make sense.
It's like people that delay going on trips till they retire, but then they die
Right.
before they retire.
Right.
Exactly.
Or
Or they're
should have taken that
handicapped,
trip.
You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
You
It's
know.
like by the time you get to retirement, you have gout or whatever,
Yeah.
and you can't walk. It's like,
Yeah.
well, that
Right.
kind of a waste.
Yeah.
Wow.
Um,
That is
so-
an interesting, because I like when you describe stoicism and hedonism, it's like I feel like there is some. It's kind of like the people that are like, I will never eat a cookie, and it's
Yeah.
like, you're only going to live once. You should eat a cookie
Right.
once
Yeah.
in a while,
Right.
because it's amazing.
I
know,
think about that with alcohol, like
yeah.
pretty frequently actually, because
Like I'll never
I-
give this up.
I
It's
kn-
amazing.
I know. Well, I know there's so many people that are just like, I give alcohol, it's the best thing I ever did. I'm 4 years sober or whatever. And like, I look at those and think like, yeah, that makes sense. Like, it's a neurotoxin. You're drinking poison. None of it's good for you. It's all bad. Like, why do I
Mhm.
want to keep drinking alcohol? But it's also like, man, it's pretty fun. Like, I
Yeah.
have fun when I go out with my friends and we drink and all hang out. It's like the social lubricant thing is real. And like, also happiness doesn't just come from purely from discipline. It also comes from the like number one source on the largest happiness study ever done from Harvard is relationship.
Alcohol. Oh,
Yeah.
the data says
same thing.
alcohol is the best time you're going to
And I'm not suggesting that you can't enjoy relationships
No.
without alcohol. I'm just saying that
It
like
depends the relationship.
it's just an enhancer, and it makes like, I don't know. I don't think, as of right now, as of today, like I don't think I'll ever be at a point where I'm like, I swear off alcohol forever. I think it's good to go without it for periods of
Yeah.
time, which is what
If
we
you
do.
can't imagine going a period without it,
Yeah.
you should go a period
Absolutely.
without
Yeah,
it.
you should probably do that, or
With
check yourself
anything.
into rehab. Like, yeah,
Yeah.
like
Literally anything
you
else.
probably have a problem.
Oh, I have
But-
so many thoughts on that.
But
Right.
also it's
Yeah.
but that's one thing that I've thought about is just like, I just think that it should be all things in moderation, including moderation, if that makes sense. Like, even moderation should be in moderation. So like, yeah, we don't drink like crazy all the time, but sometimes it's also fun to go out on the golf course with your buddies and shotgun 5 beers and have a great afternoon. Like
Yeah.
it's just
I've
like,
never been invited golfing, so it sounds like a really good time.
I've literally invited you like 7 times. You're always like, no, okay.
I know. Yeah, you're right.
right.
No, I'm so scared. Detour. I'm so scared because I've never done it.
Well, we should do a driving range first.
I've done a driving range,
Oh.
and I was bad. And I
You're
want
gonna
to.
be bad.
I would
It's a hard
I would
game.
like to go if it was like just one. Like if it's just you, I would go. I don't want to go with like people I don't know, and then it's like you brought the shittiest golfer.
I see.
And I'm also scared because sometimes I'm really naturally just good at things, and I don't want to be like, then
You
be like,
wanna show me up.
oh, he's so much better than us. Why are you laughing? Have you gone golfing? You've gone golfing.
Yeah, I'm good at it.
Yeah.
What the heck? Is that a lie?
She is honestly, for somebody who doesn't golf ever, she's good. She's
I'm
very
naturally okay at it, I would say. I'm just
good.
saying.
She's good at it.
Yeah.
For like, yeah. Like if she worked on it for a while, like she would actually.
Yeah, I would go. But like even when we're at Topgolf, like swinging in front of people, I was like, fuck. I just want to go. Like I want to go somewhere, just like a secret little pasture and practice.
secret pasture.
But I'm just not naturally. Believe it or not, I'm not naturally athletic with a lot of stuff, and
Believe it or
so
not.
like I can bring some aggression and some like I'll give it my all,
Yeah.
but it's not pretty.
But your all doesn't go well.
Yeah, like I'll run across that court, but don't throw me the ball. You know? Like I will be the first one to the other side.
Yeah, but Eric, how do you get better?
Do it.
Thinking about it.
Do I?
I don't know. I had to think about it.
But yeah, all that
Anyway.
to say, hedonism versus
It's fun
stoicism.
to have fun,
Yes.
and it's it's like cigar. I think ultimately like the biggest piece of that we kind of touched on is like if you find yourself needing any of those things to be okay, like
Yeah.
if you are in a social situation, like I need a drink every time you're in one, or like for me, like I can smoke a cigar and not smoke for a year, and be
Yeah.
fine,
Yeah.
but I enjoy smoking a cigar. Or same with drinking. Like that's the funniest. Have you seen that Bert Kreischer clip with Huberman?
I don't think
See, I was in your algorithm again, but he's like, Bert Kreischer is an alcoholic.
Yeah.
I don't know if you knew that.
Yeah.
He hides it. He
That's
masks
kind of
it
what he's
really
known
well.
for.
But he was like sitting there. He's like, because Huberman said you should do like 2 drinks a week or whatever.
Yeah.
And Kreischer's like, nobody does that. He's like, nobody drinks 2 drinks a week. And if they say they do, they're lying. You can't just have 2 drinks. And I'm like sitting there, I'm like, I have like 1 drink maybe every 2 weeks.
Let's be frank. I don't know you well enough to say this, but I'll say it anyway. You don't seem like somebody who can have just 2 a week. I think 0 is going to be.
Hang on. Let's be.
I think 0 is going to be.
Let's talk
I think
logistics.
0. By the way, your fans probably
There's-
hate me right
no,
now. They're
there's
like, "Why'd
no
you bring
one-
this asshole
There's
on?"
no
But-
one who has 2 drinks a week. There's not. Listen, if you're that person, you're lying to yourself. No one goes, well, that one whiskey was great. I'll have another one Thursday. Fuck off.
I saw Tom have 1 drink the other
Oh,
night.
he's dead inside.
He always says this. Like,
Yeah,
I mean,
I don't even think you finished your drink.
I don't think so
Yeah,
either.
I don't think you finished your drink.
Yeah. Well, because you didn't want it, so I get it. Don't get the
Yeah,
calories.
yeah.
Like, well, that's my whole point. It's like, don't have the fucking calories. Like, what am I drinking red wine to stain my teeth? No, I either drink at a party or I don't drink at a party. Like,
You drink wine though, like it is, like you're like it's 105 and it's Gatorade. Like you're just
I
like
drink wine like
pour-
Alexander and I are great are pulling up on an elephant in 5 minutes. Like, I'm like, fucking let's down it.
I can't believe you've never seen that though.
No. I never saw that he was even on their show.
It's 105 minutes Gatorade.
So
That's
we going to talk
hilarious.
about your post on here?
Yeah, we'll get to
Well,
it.
yeah, we'll get to that.
Oh, okay.
That'll be a hard cut.
I thought you were done. That's why I thought that we were.
Oh no.
Oh, we got in a
Did you-
very long tangent there. So
Did you have any?
Damn.
you did. How did this turn
Me?
into that?
Wait, I had a long tangent?
Yes, with the video.
This is a podcast. We got to talk. Damn. I won't say anything. Sorry, guys.
Did you have anything to add to that then?
Jackie said, are we fucking done?
No. I didn't know.
Nobody
We're
should
still
have
talking about
anything else to
cancer?
add to this. Yeah.
Oh, do you have anything to add to what you said, or just like to the experience?
Well, I guess we'll
or-
just kind of leave that, like button up what I was just saying, and then
Yeah.
I'll pass it off to you guys to say like,
Yeah. Well,
Did
what-
we
what
learn
do you-
anything
what-
from
like,
going
what
through
were
it
you
with
thinking?
you? Or?
What do
Okay.
you think about like, because that's what you think about like death. right? Like I'm saying in terms of it puts in perspective like this balance between like the importance of like I guess the importance of important things like building things and
Yeah.
creating things and living a life of purpose and meaning. But also it puts into perspective too, like let me also not sacrifice any enjoyment now
Right.
for a future that
Yes.
nobody's guaranteed.
Yeah.
Like that's a pretty healthy balance to come out the other end of, you know? And I feel like that's the part that was missing last episode is like, you're just like, everybody in the graveyard is dead and they're just as dead as the other guy. And I was like, I don't want to be one of those guys.
Yeah.
You know? And like, what does that
It's
mean
just
for my
not something
life?
that we can avoid.
Like, so I guess Jackie, so I don't want a tangent. What do you think? What like, where do you feel like you sit with it? Or do you feel like it's one of those things like it feels abstract still? Because I feel like you've been thinking about mortality too.
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
You've been thinking about upgrades, people, upgrades. She's like, round 2.
So what was the question? Like,
Yeah, the question was, who did you have lined up to marry
Oh,
again?
I see.
I'm just kidding.
Channing Tatum, of course.
That's so
Wow.
weird.
Yeah.
That's
He
the most.
also has to agree to it. You can't just kidnap him.
That's the most vanilla answer. You got to pick someone with edge.
It was definitely like a very different perspective for sure. Obviously, being like the person that you share life with.
Yeah.
That obviously was very hard. Not something I ever.
I never heard your side of it. What was your story when you were listening to the first doctor that told us?
I think it was just for me. It was shock again. Like, and I think it was a weird thing. I think that you've always, like you said in the last one. I mean, you've always been the strong one, right? Like, I feel like, unfortunately, in our last 10 years of marriage, I feel like the majority of the hardships that we went through have been like on my side that you've had to deal with. Like my dad dying or losing a baby, it obviously is different when you're carrying it. Like it was always more coming from me, I guess, in that sense. So I feel like probably like the most difficult thing for me that I took out of it was that it is much easier, at least for me and my personality, to be the person going through it. I think that like it was one of the most helpless feelings ever. I think that's why I did all the phone calls, right? And didn't even think about it on all that front, because like for me, I'm kind of a control freak, I guess, in that sense. I can control myself. Like I can control how I deal with things, but seeing the person that I love the most go through it, like again, like it's like your kids in that sense. Like you would take that pain every time over and over and over again.
Yeah.
So I think that like that for me was the hardest thing going through it. Of just like I would rather get cancer over and over again than watch you get it again. Like it just like that was extremely difficult for me. I know we joke around about it, but again, just like I don't want to share my life with anybody else. Like I definitely thought through that whole process too. Of just
Except
like
Channing
this is
Tatum. You're like, maybe Channing Tatum.
If Channing Tatum walked in this door right now, she would literally shoot me in the head.
Whoa.
He's like, I'm on deck.
That was from cancer.
Boom!
He had cancer. He was about to die anyway. So
It's whatever.
I'm Jackie.
Wow. No. It's so terrible. But yeah, just that I don't want to share life with anybody else. Again, I know that there's
But to be
again-
fair, to keep the Magic Mike conversation going, if Selma Hayek walked
Oh,
in the
yeah.
door, you'd shoot
Well-
Jack at that.
Well,
Well, I don't even know who that is, but okay.
Isn't she in the last Magic Mike?
Oh, the terrible actor. So she's not
terrible.
Selma Hayek's not
Have
a
you
terrible
seen it?
actress.
No,
Okay, it was terrible.
but she's not a terrible.
I love Channing Tatum.
She is a really
but
good actor.
That was
Yeah.
a bad one.
She's really good.
I don't know why they just made it very cheesy,
And
like
she's really
very
attractive.
cheesy. Oh, that's fine. Yeah, she's attractive for sure.
Yeah.
That movie was just very cheesy. Like the last one was, I think, the worst one of all.
Well, you
of
don't
them.
have to be a good actress to be my wife.
Oh, fair. Guess fair enough.
When Jackie has
That's
to
not how I
pretend to like
measure.
you.
What?
Jackie has to pretend to like you.
Haha.
But yeah, that
All right,
was my
sorry.
biggest. Yeah, that was my biggest takeaway for that side of it. Was just like, yeah, again, and it just made me think of it on the other side too. Of just like there's things that I want to experience with you before we again we have a very unique situation where we've known each other since we were 16, and so I feel like we have got to experience a lot of life together. But again, there's just a lot more that I want to experience life, and I don't want to experience it with anyone else. And I want to. Then again, it definitely made me think that side too. Of it made me. I think that's probably singing out loud for the first time too. I think that's why I got so much like fire behind me too. I think even with like the Everbowl stuff and all that is just like it just kind of made me just be like, fuck this. Like I want to live life at a different level because you don't know how much you have left. And it's just
Yeah.
like, I do want to get there as quickly as possible now, just so we can experience life in the way that we want to experience life.
Like a renewed sense of urgency.
Very much so. Yeah. Of just like, it was, because again, I think that we were just kind of, for me and you, I don't know if you feel like this way, but I feel like we've kind of just been in like a little bit of a funk in the last year of just like we hit a level of life and we're comfortable in life to a certain extent that it was kind of just like, I like, what do we want to do? And like, what is next? And like, do we want to move? Do we want to stay here? Like all that kind of stuff of just kind of just
A
feeling
lot
a
of
little
navel
bit,
gazing going on
A lot of navel
in the
gazing.
chapel house.
just a
That's-
lot
I
of being stuck.
Couldn't have said it better
Well,
myself.
Let me ask this. Are you joking?
No.
No, like a lot of like
Yeah.
you get comfortable enough to where you can think.
Yeah.
Because I do feel like your moments of big growth are like when it's like when you lose a job.
Yeah.
You're like the best entrepreneur in your fucking life.
Right.
And then like you start making enough money to where it's like, I'm not worried about rent. And then
Yeah.
you're like, you chill out.
Yeah.
You know? So
Yeah.
like you need that foot to the fire.
For sure.
It shouldn't have to be horrible big things.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
But it just
But sometimes
does.
that's what it takes. Yeah.
What's the biggest thing that you guys would like to experience? You said like there's things I want to experience together. Like what's the thing that like is top of mind where you're like, and this doesn't have to be obviously kids grow up, do that, like
Yeah.
those things normal. But like what's like a bucket list thing that you guys are both like, is there anything that was like jostle where it's like, we should plan that trip or we should do this thing or buy this, whatever.
Not for me. It was
I think for me it was more family trips. I think that we talk about. I think with us, at least that's what mine was.
That's why you guys are going to Lancaster this weekend. You're like,
Yeah.
we gotta go back.
we gotta get to the
Well,
oasis.
'cause I feel like we both-
Bury me at home.
The oasis in the
Bury-
desert.
Are you
We
going to be
just
buried in
were really-
Lancaster?
No,
Like,
I have no idea.
do you
but
get a
no.
brick at the church?
Yeah, probably. My last name's Chapel, so
Oh my god. Anyways,
All right, sorry.
I was gonna say, like, we're just really bad, and I've learned this with us too, especially having kids. We always tag trips onto work trips,
Yeah.
and like we've both done that. But there was one trip we took, which actually, ironically, it was technically tagged onto something going to Utah with the kids in January. But I think during that time, we both sent each other like videos from that trip, and it's probably like the best, just family. Again, just us two, just the four of us. Like, again, we're very fortunate to have family around us that like we love spending time with and stuff, especially your family, where we go on a lot of trips
Yeah.
with people. But it was just like the one, and we brought Sadie with us too. So we literally had like all of us,
All the
and-
kids.
yeah, literally. Yeah. And just like in the middle of nowhere. And that's just like some of our favorite family memories. And it just definitely made me like realize that, like, again, like I want more of those. Like I want to be more purposeful of the fact that, like, again, because again, you think about it at the time when it's like, oh, well, like we shouldn't have spent this because we rented a car and like we got an Airbnb. And I was like, well, how much did it cost? And again, realizing that now I have no idea how much that trip cost.
Yeah.
And it literally is
You're not
completely
going to remember
irrelevant.
that.
Yeah,
forever.
exactly.
Like,
And our kids are at an age now too, which again, to all those people out there too, or when your kids are young, it's so difficult to travel. And like it's sometimes not worth the work of what it takes. But our kids right now, especially their age, like they're fun. And like we just laugh so hard. And like some of those memories are just some of the best memories we've had. And so for me, it was just definitely that of just like be more purposeful about just like, even if it's driving to, 6 hours away. It wasn't
Yeah.
like we had to go to Greece. Obviously, I'd love to go to Greece and like all those things too. But for me, I didn't think about those even. I
Yeah.
thought about just more of just like, I want more core family memories of the four of us going places and just like creating those.
doing something.
Yeah, because again, even for our kids, right? Like if in worst case scenario, obviously something did terrible happen, like I want our kids to remember those times. And I do feel like those are the memories that stick out. Again,
Yeah.
like I would like to say that they would remember you on a day-to-day basis, but like I don't know that. But like most likely they are going to remember us out in the snow tubing for the first time together, and how daddy did that. And like those memories are the ones that I definitely like, it made priority for me for
Yeah.
sure to have those.
Yeah, honestly, for me, it wasn't any milestones for me that I was thinking about in terms of like personal life. It was more just like, again, I wish I
He's like, I bought a car.
wanted to accomplish.
So
I-
surprised.
Surprised.
Just buy a car.
yeah, I wanted to accomplish more.
Yeah.
like I want to do like bigger things, and it would suck to have the opportunity taken away from
Yeah.
me before I had the chance to like get those things rolling.
No.
But then the other thing was just related to my kids. It was just like all I thought about was their milestones, and like that would suck.
Yeah.
So I mean, but again, it would suck way more for them
Yeah.
because I'm not there. Like I don't have any frame
It
of
wouldn't-
reference
it
for
wouldn't
what I'm
suck
going to feel
for you
about not being there
then.
because I won't be
Yeah.
there. You know what I mean?
Such a weird.
So it was just
Yeah,
it
the
was
way you
just-
said that seemed like I'm so awesome. It's not gonna suck.
Like
Well, no,
it
I'm
would,
just saying-
they'd be the ones missing out.
Yeah,
really.
it's like
well, but
No,
that's how
but
it would be.
it is true.
That's
yeah.
how it would be
But
because
that's the
I'm
thing
not
that-
there. I'm dead.
But that's the
Like,
thing. That's
none of
that's
that matters
such a
to me at
weird,
that point.
Like you can't even put yourself in that
Right.
context.
Like again, even if there is an afterlife, like even if you're watching from heaven or whatever,
No.
it's like
well, at least
still
you
none of
have
it matters.
some- yeah.
Still nothing matters that's happening
Right.
here because I don't have any frame of reference
Yeah.
for what it feels like to be dead. Like the
Sure.
only frame of reference I have is that I don't know what it felt like to be alive a year before I was born because I wasn't born yet. So like, how do I know what if that's anything close to what it feels like? It's nothingness.
yeah.
You know what I mean? So like nothingness is there's nothing there. So
Yeah.
like it can't bother, you know what I mean? Like it's not going to bother me anymore. It's just like the thought of missing out on those things
Yeah.
was just like,
And the
that would be
thought
so-
of them
be so terrible.
experiencing that
Yeah.
is a lot. Yeah.
Right.
I will say that. I think.
And not getting to see who they become
Yeah.
was like you know, right now they're like I said 3 and 5. So they're just kids, but
Yeah.
not being able to like see them turn into adults was just like that would be
Yeah.
that would be terrible. But again, if I'm gone,
Yeah.
you know, like it's not going to
Yeah.
matter.
It's
to
like
me at
just
that point.
setting it up for them to have a good life, basically. Yeah.
Yeah, and that was my biggest thing is like I wish I would have already done that because like we've been lucky enough to be able to travel a lot
Mhm.
already. Like we've seen I don't know, I've been to like 32 or 33 countries and like 35 of the 50 states.
The ones that you want to go to.
Yeah, I'm good.
Like
Yeah.
we've seen the
No.
real country. Okay.
No, I obviously want to travel a lot more and stuff, but that wasn't anywhere near like
Yeah.
top of mind for me, if that
Yeah.
makes sense.
Well, I don't know about you guys. That's enough death talk for me today.
Yeah,
How about
Yeah.
don't die for
yeah.
now?
Okay. Yeah, that's what it looks
I
like now.
said that kind of Australian thing. Okay.
Okay.
Okay then. Okay then. Well,
All righty.
a little
I'll
Jordan
stick
Belfort
around.
in there. Yeah. Oh yeah.
For a little longer.
In the bush. They're always in the bush. Isn't that them?
They're always in the bush. Isn't that
I am in the
them?
bush.
Is that an Indian Australian?
I feel like I just got
Your
canceled in
accent's
4
diverging.
different. Oi, laddie, have a join me in the join me in the bush.
Scottish, Irish? I don't know. What's the laddie? That's Scottish. It's not Australian.
All right, comrade.
Throwing some German in there now.
That's Russian.
Comrade?
Comrade. Fräulein.
Fraulein. No, that's German.
Yeah. I was adding it because you said to.
Oh.
Sell me this pen. All right. Anyway, that's enough death.
Okay, enough death talk. All that to say, yeah, well, let me
Wait,
just button it
one
up.
more death talk.
Let me just button it up.
One more death talk.
Okay.
I want it now. Jackie, do we keep doing figuring it out? If Travis.
Oh, jeez, that's heavy.
I don't
No,
think-
I'm saying no.
Don't backpedal now.
If Travis,
Yeah, we
Kick
got
the
that.
bucket.
but I'm in the. You're good now. I'm so if Travis had not been,
Yeah. You guys
would we still do figuring out? We wouldn't have.
I would. I don't think you would have kept it going.
I feel like we would to keep his.
I feel like we'd
legacy
feel
alive.
forced to stay
Yeah, I would.
to keep this.
I would.
We'd keep
well,
the
that's
mic.
probably when
Yeah.
the success of the show would come
It's like,
posthumously.
yeah.
Did you make up that word?
No, that's a real word.
What did you just say?
Posthumously.
They said posthumously. I was like, what is that?
Posthumously.
Yeah, I don't think I could go weekly without hearing
After death.
Got it.
Like-
possum.
Like
possum.
Picasso.
Got
I
it.
don't think I could go a week without hearing you say a word like possumly. So we'd keep
Well,
it going.
Thankfully,
What
we
was the other
won't
one?
have to.
Oh God. I mean, there's a interest interspect
interflecting.
interflect.
Ugh.
That was a good one.
Yeah. Jackie wishes we'd both die. Yeah.
Where's
If Channing Tatum
when
walked
you need him?
in, if Channing Tatum walked in, she'd shoot you, and she'd just shoot me for good measure.
Well,
For
he-
good measure.
It's like,
He was cancer adjacent.
yeah. To Eric, yeah. Eric's co-terminal.
And then Tara writes her a thank you note.
Tara hates Channing Tatum.
Oh, well,
If Harry Styles walked in, she would shoot me in the face.
Harry Styles? That's Tara.
Tara would, to be fair, Tara would shoot me in the face if nobody walked
That's
in.
wild because you don't look anything like Harry Styles.
But he is effeminate,
That's
which
completely
seems to be a
opposite
trend
side.
for her. She likes effeminate men.
You are effeminate, which brings us to a great conversation.
No,
Oh,
we're not gonna talk about that.
No,
right
no. Well, we got to talk a little bit about
now.
it.
Okay.
Okay, but just to button up that last
Just
conversation.
button up this
Okay,
and segue
so-
into something that has nothing to do with this.
The final thing on that was basically, if you have never taken the time, because honestly, it makes a lot of sense. It's a morbid thing to think about. It's not fun to think about. But if you've never taken the time to reflect on your own death,
To interflect.
really
as
not,
you were.
yeah, to interflect. If you never interflected on your mortality, if you never really thought about, not really necessarily like death and like, you know, how you're going to die, but just the fact that it is an unavoidable, inescapable part of living that none of us can get away from, unless AI and quantum computing figure something out in our lifetimes, which is actually not completely out of the question, according to a couple of the interviews that we've done on Travis Makes Friends. But
Which you're
If you
listening
never-
to right now.
yeah, if you've never taken the time to actually do that, I would definitely recommend it. I just think that it leads to making better decisions in life when you realize that, like, the people that you're worried about, the situation you're worried about, the opinions of others that you're worried about, the potential negative consequences of a big risk that you know could potentially work out for you, make you happier. Like, you're letting these external factors prevent you from living the version of life that you really want to live. When you really take the time to sit there and think about the fact that none of us are going to be here in like 200 years and none of that really matters. Like, I think it just allows you to, it gives you the freedom to be able to make the decisions that you have to make. And so I do recommend thinking about it and reflecting on it and seeing what that does for, you know, if you're coming across like a big crossroads or making a hard decision, reflect on that a little bit. You know, don't go too far down the rabbit hole if you're somebody who gets really anxious. But yeah, that was probably the most comforting thing to me during all of that, was just like, if it happened, like, I don't want this to happen, but if it does happen, it's completely out of my control. I can't,
And
do
it's
anything
going
about
to
it.
happen
And
at
it's
some
gonna happen
point.
with-
Yeah.
and at some point it's going to happen. So
Maybe.
I think it made me a little bit more comfortable, like a little bit less worried about aging as well. You know, it's like, I know it's a lot of people are listening being like, oh, it's so silly for you to think that because I'm 31. But like, when I turned 30,
I think
That,
that's when
like-
most people start thinking about it.
yeah. Because when you turn 30, it's like the impossible just happened.
When you smile and then like the little creases stay,
Well, that's been going on for a long time for me.
you're like,
But
yeah.
but
And
when I turned 30, it was like,
We have Botox,
it was like
bro.
unavoidable at that point. It was like I said, the impossible happened. It's like, when you're growing up, 30's old.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, when you're
And then-
young, you literally feel like, I'm built different. I'm not going to die.
Yeah.
You're
and
kind of like in your brain are like not even thinking that's a real
you
possibility.
you don't like correlate those things. Then you turn 30 and it's like, wait, if it's possible to turn 30, then it's possible to turn 40
Yeah.
and then 50 and then 60.
And then my kid just turned
and then
5.
time only gets
I'm-
faster the older you get. So I was kind of having some issues even thinking through those things before all this happened. So like, when that happened, it like immediately shaved 90 years off my timeline in my brain. I was like, I should
God's like,
probably
think about
deal with
this.
this. Yeah. So yeah, I kind of just allowed myself to go there a little bit more this time.
Yeah.
And I do think that it's a beneficial practice for everybody on a,
Yeah.
you know, fairly regular basis. So anyway,
That was cherry.
What?
I said that was cherry.
That was cheery.
like on top.
Cheery.
Oh, cheery.
Cheerio.
Okay.
Like Australian.
How long have we been recording?
I don't know.
Jackie's checking emails, looking at attachments, reading through operating
She's
agreements,
reading
pulling
comments.
up Instagram.
Literal worst.
We've
No,
lost
I
her.
was